They came in tactical vests, to unplug my generator. Clipboard in one hand, fake badge in the other. "Sir," one of them said, "we're here to enforce energy neutrality." I just stood there. In a robe. Holding a coffee. My only thought? Am I being raided by the Department of Bad Decisions? Behind them, a van with HOA Compliance Unit stenciled in Comic Sans. One of them tripped over my garden gnome and screamed, "Suspect resisting grid policy." Boom. I flipped the generator switch. Lights on. Sirens off. And that's when they called for backup. Not cops. A power therapist and a drone. Rewind 48 hours. This all started because I wanted toast during a blackout. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from today. Ever been raided by HOA cosplay troops for using a toaster? Hit that like button if you've ever had a neighbor go full villain over something stupid. Subscribe for more unhinged HOA stories, and drop a comment below. Backhand index pointing right. What's the dumbest fine you've ever received? You ever do something completely reasonable, something that makes sense to any adult with a functioning brain, and suddenly find yourself labeled a domestic terrorist? Yeah. That was me. All I did was install a generator. Not a nuke silo. Not a crypto farm. Just a generator. A loud, grumpy, diesel-guzzling beast of a machine that kept my lights on while the rest of the neighborhood fumbled around with scented candles and existential dread. Now before you judge, let me paint the scene. It's week 3 of rolling blackouts. The grid's more unstable than my ex's Facebook posts, and I'm done eating defrosted pizza rolls by flashlight. So I dropped $2,000 on a beautiful, used Caterpillar generator from a guy named Buzz, who may or may not be on a watch list. Whatever, it works. I plop it next to the shed, hook it up like a good little homeowner, and boom. Power. Lights. Wi-Fi. Ice cubes. Civilization. And of course, that's when the screaming started. It was around 8:15 p.m. I had just microwaved an actual meal, which in blackout times is basically a Michelin star event, when I heard it. That unmistakable banshee wail slicing through the humid night air like a passive-aggressive banshee. "You're violating community balance!" There she was. Karen. Now, every neighborhood has a Karen. Ours comes with an HOA badge, 3 clipboards, and enough self-importance to declare martial law over Christmas lights. She was standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac in a lavender tracksuit, one hand clutching a mug that said, "Coffee makes me nice," and the other waving a manila folder like she was about to file a citizen's arrest against the concept of electricity. I stepped out onto my porch, plate of mac and cheese in hand. She pointed at the generator like it had personally insulted her labradoodle. "That thing is disrupting the visual serenity of our block," she shrieked. "It's a generator, Karen," I said, chewing slowly. "You know, for electricity? That thing you haven't had since Tuesday? I don't need power," she snapped. "I have candles. Real communities bond in darkness." Right. Because shared suffering is character building. I tried diplomacy. I really did. "Karen," I said, trying not to sound like I was about to throw my plate at her, "I installed it on my own property. I checked local code. I filed the permit. It's legal." "Oh," she said, her eyes gleaming like a villain origin story in progress. "But is it HOA approved?" I blinked. "Is what now?" She marched up my walkway like a discount attorney general. HOA Regulation 7.4 states that any exterior modifications that emit noise, light, or odor must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. I stared at her. "Karen, the Architectural Review Committee is just you and your poodle, Mr. Snuffles." "Exactly," she said, smug. "And we did not approve." That's when I made my first mistake. I laughed. Just a little. Nothing malicious. Just a short, disbelieving, "Ha," that slipped out before my brain could stop it. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. "Fine," she hissed. "If you won't comply peacefully, we'll escalate." She turned on her orthopedic heel and stormed off. Mr. Snuffles growled. I went back inside, finished my mac and cheese, and promptly forgot about the whole thing. That was my second mistake. The next morning, I woke up to a knock. Not the friendly, hey neighbor kind. The kind that says someone's here to ruin your day. I opened the door to two men. Matching khaki uniforms. Reflective vests. One had a tablet. The other had a badge clipped to his belt that said, Energy Compliance Division, HOA Enforcement. I stared. Sir, said Tablet Guy, we're here to conduct a noise and emissions audit under the Simmons Valley Community Standards Initiative. What the hell is that? I asked. Energy Neutrality Inspection, said Vest Guy. We've had reports of excessive decibel output and unbalanced light pollution. I blinked. Light pollution? He nodded. You're the only house on the street with power. It's creating a psychological imbalance. You mean jealousy? Visual aggression, he corrected. It triggers envy, which leads to community discord. Article 8. I stared at them. Then at the badge. It had a cartoon lightning bolt and Comic Sans font. Okay, I said. You've got 10 seconds to get off my property before I sick my very real dog on your very fake division. They looked at each other. Tablet Guy tapped something. Noted. Resident refused audit. Escalation recommended. They turned and left. Just like that. I stood there for a minute. Processing. Trying to decide if I was still asleep or just living in a very dumb simulation. Then I looked down at my porch and saw the notice. High voltage immediate action required. Unauthorized power unit in violation. Remove generator or face fines and enforcement. They duct-taped it to my welcome mat. And right then I knew. This wasn't about noise. This wasn't about rules. This was a turf war. And my generator? Was public enemy number one. You ever feel like your neighborhood is one step away from becoming its own rogue nation? Like someone's going to start printing HOA currency and issuing curfews? Yeah. That was Tuesday. Let me set the scene. After the Energy Compliance Squad, aka two guys and vests from Party City, failed to intimidate me into silence, I figured maybe, just maybe, Karen had gotten the message. That she'd scuttle back into her feng shui nightmare of a home and leave me and my glorious, legally permitted generator alone. Again, I was wrong. Because the next day I got my first fine. It wasn't in the mailbox. Oh no. It was delivered by drone. A small, buzzing, HOA-branded drone dropped a laminated envelope directly onto my porch with surgical precision. Inside? A formal-looking letter that read, Infraction Notice. Violation, Unauthorized Personal Utility System. Fine, $1,200. Action required, immediate disconnection. Addendum, the HOA has received complaints about excessive wattage-related pride. Wattage-related pride. I didn't even know what to do with that sentence. Frame it? Burn it? Tattoo it on my knuckles? Anyway, I ignored it. Because again, not in the HOA, legally or spiritually. But later that night, something felt off. I was sitting in my kitchen, basking in the warm LED glow that only comes from winning at life, when I noticed the generator sounded different. Subtler. A little more strained. Like it was working harder than usual. I figured maybe it needed fuel. Or maybe the ghosts of HOA past were trying to haunt it. So I threw on a hoodie and stepped out to check the load monitor. And that's when I saw it. A cord. A thick black cord I didn't install. It was snaking across my side yard, neatly hidden along the base of my fence, pinned under a row of decorative rocks, and disappearing through a hole in the slats into Karen's yard. For 5 long seconds I just stared at it. Processing. She wasn't just mad about the generator. She was using it. Karen, queen of the dark, sworn enemy of artificial light, patron saint of scented candles, was secretly stealing my power. It was so stupid, so on brand, that I almost respected it. Almost. Now I could have called the cops. Reported energy theft. I had the photos, the evidence, the righteous fury. But that's not how you deal with a Karen. No. You go full HOA on her. So I made a plan. Step 1: bait the hook. I uncoiled the mystery cord just enough to loosen it. Then I zip-tied it to a motion sensor. Anytime someone pulled juice through it, it'd trigger a smart plug to flip on a hidden camera, a power usage spike monitor, and this is key, a power diversion alarm that screamed, "Power surge detected," in a robot voice. Was it necessary? No. Was it petty? Absolutely. Step 2: wait for darkness. At 9:02 p.m., the street went black again. Grid outage number 6 of the month. Except for me. My house lit up like a Vegas billboard. 5 minutes later, I saw movement near the fence. A glint of lavender and anxiety. Karen peeked around the corner like a raccoon with a Fitbit. Then retreated. The cord pulsed. And then the alarm went off. Warning: power surge detected. Illegal connection registered. Lights flashed. The motion cam lit up. And I, like a vengeful suburban warlord, stood on the porch in a bathrobe holding a flashlight like it was the sword of justice. There was a squeal. A thump. Then silence. I checked the footage later. Karen had slipped on her own garden gnome and face-planted into a bush. But it gets better. Step 3: the exposure. The next morning, I printed out high-res screenshots of the footage. Karen crouching. Karen yanking the cord. Karen sprinting like she'd been caught stealing cookies from the universe. I attached the photos to a homemade HOA-style violation notice and posted them on every mailbox in the cul-de-sac. Title: Unauthorized Energy Harvesting, Community Warning. With a subhead: Is your neighbor powering her wine fridge with someone else's wattage? Karen lost it. She marched over at noon, holding the flyer in one hand and a half-eaten gluten-free biscotti in the other like both were weapons. "You humiliated me," she snarled. "No," I said. "You did that yourself when you plugged your Roomba into my generator without asking." "I had a right to that power," she shouted. "You had a cord to that power. Big difference." She turned beet red, then hissed something about litigation, slander, and emotional energy vandalism, which I'm 90% sure is a term she made up on the walkover. I calmly handed her a bill. $378 in estimated stolen power. $20 for the zip ties. $5.75 for emotional damages for me. Plus tax. She ripped it up and stormed off. But the next day, her lights stayed off. And mine? Never shined brighter. 3 days. That's how long it took. 3 days of Karen sulking in darkness. 3 days of cold coffee and no blow-dried poodle. 3 days without the sweet, stolen hum of my generator coursing through her fake marble countertops. I thought maybe, she'd learned her lesson. Spoiler, she hadn't. Because on the morning of day 4, I looked out my window and saw him. A man. Early 40s. Aviator sunglasses. Safety vest that screamed. Government cosplay. He walked with the confidence of someone who's never been told no, and the smugness of a guy whose entire personality is, "I once cited someone for an unpainted fence post." He stepped out of a gray minivan, not a city vehicle, mind you, but one of those off-brand models that looks like it came with built-in resentment and a complimentary clipboard. And what did he have in his hand? You guessed it. A clipboard. With my name on it. I opened the door before he could even knock. "Can I help you?" I asked, already preparing to unleash the fury of 10,000 zoning codes. He didn't answer right away. Just looked over his glasses, glanced at my generator humming beside the house like a sleepy dragon, and nodded to himself. "Sir," he said, flipping a sheet with dramatic flair, "I'm here to conduct a power structure inspection. You've been flagged under Suburban Infrastructure Anomaly Code 14C. I blinked. What? He tapped the clipboard like it was a sacred artifact. Generator nonconformity. Fuel-based pollutant index. Unregulated wattage output. He paused. Plus, visual disruption. Visual disruption. Let me guess, I said. Karen sent you. I'm here on behalf of the HOA Environmental Impact Board, he replied. That's not a real thing, I shot back. Oh, it will be, he said ominously. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a random HOA goon. This guy was professionally delusional. He had custom patches sewn onto his vest. One said, Civic Power Officer. The other? Grid Justice Division. I kid you not. He started circling my generator like he was inspecting a bomb. You see, he said, pulling out a tiny noise meter. Karen filed a report stating that the ambient decibel levels in this area have dropped due to the outage, except your house. This imbalance creates what we call an acoustic class disparity. You just made that up, I said. It's in my report, he said proudly. I was 2 seconds from launching him into orbit when he pulled out a bright orange sticker, condemned, subject to review, and tried to slap it on my generator. Oh, hell no. I stepped between him and my beautiful, humming machine like it was a war crime tribunal. Touch that sticker to my property, I said calmly, and I swear to every word in this zip code, I will bury you in code violations so deep you'll need a miner's helmet and a lawyer. He hesitated. That was his mistake. Because at that exact moment, my neighbor Tom appeared with his phone out, already filming. Smile, sunshine, Tom said. Say illegal impersonation of a municipal inspector for the camera. Clipboard guy froze. This isn't impersonation. Oh yeah? I said. Because I just called the actual city. They've never heard of the Grid Justice Division. He turned pale. You've got 10 seconds, I said, to get your vest, your knockoff badge, and your fraudulent little folder off my property before I introduce your footage to Channel 5 News and every HOA hate group on Facebook. He bolted. Tripped over my sprinkler. Tore his vest on the gate. Karen watched the whole thing from behind her rose bushes with binoculars. I waved. But of course, it didn't end there. Because Karen doesn't quit when she loses. She rallies. That Friday, I got an envelope taped to my trash can. Invitation to HOA Disciplinary Tribunal. No return address. Just bold letters. You will appear before the board at 6 p.m. to explain your hostile energy conduct. I laughed so hard I nearly pulled a muscle. Then I marked the date on my calendar, circled it in red, and wrote next to it, Bring popcorn. The tribunal was held in the clubhouse. Of course. I walked in carrying a bag of Skittles and a thermos labeled Courtroom Juice. Inside were 7 folding chairs, a projector screen, and a whiteboard labeled Agenda, Power Equality, Noise Justice, Community Vibes. Karen sat at the head table with 2 minions and a guy wearing a tie and a Bluetooth headset that was definitely not connected to anything. Mr. Parker, she began, using my last name like she was scolding a student who drew boobs in the math textbook. We're here to address your recent infractions. I raised my hand. Is this where I get my lawyer, or my shovel to start digging the HOA's grave? Mockery will be noted, she said. Great. Let's note that I'm not part of your cult, I mean HOA. Then why did you agree to attend this tribunal? She asked smugly. I didn't. I came for the snacks. Karen inhaled sharply. Then she clicked a button on the projector. Up flashed a grainy photo of my generator. Then another, of Karen holding a decibel meter next to her wind chimes. Then a third, an artist's rendering of what my generator could explode into if wattage exceeds community comfort levels. It looked like a high school science fair made by a student on Red Bull in spite. You're a danger, she concluded. To the aesthetic, to the energy, to the very peace of this neighborhood. And you, I said, are one more clipboard away from becoming a Netflix documentary. The Bluetooth guy stood. The board has made its decision. Oh? The board? What, Karen and her poodle? Go on, genius. He cleared his throat. We hereby sentence you to a 30-day blackout period. You must cease generator use, install blackout curtains, and submit to a power neutrality review by HOA consultants. I stood up. Slowly. Dramatically. No. Karen blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not turning off my generator. I'm not submitting to anything. And if you or your fake inspectors come near my property again, I will counterfile with so much actual legal force your next board meeting will be in a courthouse. I picked up my thermos, took a long sip, and walked out while the Bluetooth guy whispered. He didn't even sign the attendance form. Karen thought she had power. But all she had was a clipboard and a god complex. And I had a backup generator, a public following, and a plan. Because I wasn't just going to win. I was going to flip the grid. The tribunal? It didn't end the way Karen hoped. Sure, she got to strut around like a Dollar Tree dictator and slap me with her fake blackout sentence. But something shifted that night, and not just my patience. No, the whole neighborhood felt it. Because here's the thing about tyrants. They only hold power if people believe they have it. And after I walked out of that HOA kangaroo court with my thermos, my smirk, and my still humming generator, people started whispering. Not about me. About her. The next morning, I found a note in my mailbox. Handwritten, folded carefully, no signature. It said, "Thank you for standing up. We're tired too. We want power back, literally." Behind it? A Polaroid. It showed Karen in her backyard, at midnight, with a splitter in hand, hooked up to a buried line leading toward another neighbor's yard. She wasn't just stealing power from me. She was running a whole damn HOA electricity racket. That's when I realized this wasn't a war. It was an uprising. So I did what any logical man would do. I bought a banner. Bright yellow. Big black letters. Hung it from my roof. High voltage free the watts. Down with Karen. High voltage. Then I made a website. powertothepopulajo.com. It had everything. Drone footage, tribunal video, noise comparison charts, memes, even a gif of Karen dramatically tripping into a compost bin during her last inspection attempt. I uploaded the whole thing to every community page, Nextdoor thread, and even the local, Buy Nothing, group, because nothing is freer than chaos. By sunset, the page had 12,000 views. That night, something beautiful happened. Around 9:15 p.m., I stepped outside with my evening coffee and noticed it. A faint hum. Not from my generator, oh no. From 3 others. To my left, Mr. Tran's garage buzzed to life. To my right, the Hendersons fired up a beast of a unit that sounded like a jet engine trying to retire peacefully. Across the cul-de-sac, the Bennett's back patio lit up like Times Square. The blackout had ended. Not from the grid. From the people. And I swear to you, when I turned around I saw it. Karen. Standing on her lawn. Bathrobe on. Hair in curlers. Just staring at the lights flickering back on all around her like a villain at the end of the movie when they realize they've lost the throne. It was glorious. Naturally, she didn't go quietly. At 11:30 p.m., I got a new notice taped to my trash bin. Only this time, it wasn't even pretending to be official. Scrawled in permanent marker, all caps, slightly smudged from what I hoped was rain. Turn off your propaganda platform, or I'll take legal action against your domain host. I laughed so hard, I nearly fell into my recycling bin. But I didn't respond. Not with words. I responded with action. Enter the Freedom Grid. I bought 5 cheap solar lights. Strung them across my driveway. Then I posted the schematic online. How to make your own Karen-proof backup system. Free download. No permit required. Bonus, includes a playlist titled Songs to Resist Tyranny 2, featuring Rage Against the Machine and Beyoncé. Downloads? 302 hours. That's when Karen tried her final move. A neighborhood emergency meeting. But not just any meeting, a mandatory town hall-style summit under the new HOA article she personally wrote the night before. Article 11, Community Energy Crisis Leadership Act. She called it the What's Conference. I couldn't make this up if I tried. I showed up fashionably late. Holding a lantern. Powered by my generator. The room was tense. Folding chairs, lukewarm lemonade, and Karen at the front like she was running for office on a platform of crushing joy. "As your HOA president," she declared, "I am hereby instituting an emergency community-wide compliance directive to restore visual and auditory peace." Some people clapped. Others didn't. Then she said it. "And anyone continuing to operate unauthorized power units will face legal consequences and social expulsion." "Oh. So it's like that now." She pointed at me. "Including you, Mr. Parker?" And that's when I pulled out the flash drive. "Before you finish your sentencing, Madam President," I said, "let's take a quick intermission." I handed the drive to the guy running the AV cart, bless his teenage soul, and he plugged it in. The room darkened. The projector lit up. And there, in full 1080p clarity, we all watched Karen. Midnight. In her bathrobe. Running an extension cord under her fence, tapping into not just my generator, but 3 others. A real-life electric leech. Spliced from multiple yards. One clip even showed her tripping, landing face first into a solar-powered flamingo. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. Then someone else clapped. Then everyone clapped. Karen just stood there. Frozen. Wide-eyed. Mouth half open like a buffering Zoom call. And me? I stepped up to the mic and said 5 words. "Let there be independent power." She didn't even finish the meeting. Left mid-applause. Didn't even take her clipboard. The next day? Her house went dark. No lights. No humming. Just silence. Like a defeated fortress retreating into itself. But I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Because Karen doesn't lose. She mutates. And what she did next? Let's just say it involved zoning violations, a trench, and the HOA equivalent of a military blockade. You'd think after being publicly exposed, booed out of her own "What's conference?" and caught red-handed siphoning electricity like a budget-bound villain, Karen would crawl back into her beige lair and let the HOA crumble in peace. Nope. Because like a horror movie villain with a clipboard instead of a machete, Karen doesn't die, she rebrands. And this time? She didn't come with fines or flyers. She came with construction equipment. It started at 5 a.m. That's right. Pre-dawn. When even raccoons are like, "Nah, I'll fight later." I was jolted awake by the rumble of heavy machinery. Looked out the window, and there it was. A rented bobcat. Karen standing next to it in a reflective vest and hard hat. And a huge, hand-painted sign that read, "Community Buffer Zone in Development, Do Not Cross." She was building a trench. Around my yard. An actual, physical, medieval-style trench. Right along the easement, with caution tape, cones, and a laminated notice nailed to my tree. Lot 17 is under review for energetic aggression. Access restricted. I stepped outside in sweatpants and fury. "Karen," I said, voice flat, "are you out of your HOA mind?" She didn't even flinch. Just raised her megaphone, yes, she had a megaphone now, and shouted, "You will remain in energetic quarantine until further notice." I looked at the trench. I looked at the cones. I looked at Karen. And I did what any normal person would do in that moment. I laughed. Hard. Like people walking their dogs turned to stare. Hard. But she wasn't laughing. No, Karen had built herself a little fantasy. A siege. And in her mind, I was the power-hungry warlord of Lot 17. So I leaned into it. If she wanted a siege? Then let's do a siege. I called in favors. My cousin works in live events. He brought over some rigging. A few extension cords. And a fog machine. By sundown, my property was surrounded by solar lights, floodlights, and, at the very center, my generator, proudly mounted on a platform with a banner that said, "High voltage. You can't silence the juice. High voltage." Then I hit play on my speakers. First track, Ride of the Valkyries. Karen lost it. Screamed over the megaphone that I was weaponizing ambience, and performing psychological operations using LED projection. And then came the final blow. Remember how she said my lot was under review? Turns out she'd filed paperwork to have my land reassessed for structural compliance. Cute idea. Except, I checked. What Karen didn't know was that her trench she had dug 4 feet past the easement line onto my property, which, legally, was trespassing. And because she used equipment, it qualified as unauthorized land alteration. But wait, there's more. Because while she was busy digging holes in the dark, guess what else she cut? My neighbor's fiber line. Meaning half the street lost internet on game night. Karen had declared siege, but what she really triggered? A neighborhood uprising. It started small. Tom from down the road threw a tomato into the trench. A literal one, not a metaphor. Then Mrs. Rees put a sign in her window. Free lot 17. Then someone else brought over a mini generator and synced it with mine. By the time local news arrived, yes, the news showed up, I had 13 houses running lights from lot 17. The headline? Suburban revolt over generator sparks power struggle. They interviewed Karen. She cried. She said I corrupted the block with wattage extremism. She said I radicalized the cul-de-sac. Then they interviewed me. I just smiled and said, all we want is the right to plug in our coffee makers without fear. 2 days later, it was over. Karen resigned from the HOA. She cited emotional exhaustion and a hostile power grid environment. She moved out within the month. Sold her house to a DJ who immediately installed solar panels and a disco ball over the garage. The HOA dissolved 6 weeks later. No one cried. Except maybe Mr. Snuffles. Poor poodle. He deserved better. Epilogue. The trench? I turned it into a koi pond. The generator? Still humming. The banner? Still flying. Because in the end, this wasn't just about power. It was about freedom. And the simple, sacred right to charge your damn phone during a blackout. If you enjoyed this wild little suburban saga, go ahead and give it a like, it helps more than you know. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in this situation? Or better yet, share your craziest HOA or neighbor story. I read every single one. And hey, if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, the next one? It's somehow even crazier. And yes, it does involve a homemade catapult.